Welcome to Murder.
And everything else.
My name is Joy.
And my name is Cheryl. And this is our podcast about murder and
This
everything
is
else.
this is our second podcast. How exciting.
It
If you
is.
stumbled on this, we have one more that we did. So you'll have to look for that one and listen to it. And then also let us know what you think.
Yeah, but be kind because we are of a certain age. I think we're
And
going to say that on every episode.
yeah,
Part
that's
of our
right. And
disclaimer.
we also don't have a production team that's putting this together for us.
Yeah.
Like we're recording it. Like, for example, I'm in my closet recording this on the floor of my closet.
With the Korean table. Tell,
Exactly.
tell the people what that is.
Yeah, with the small little Korean table that my mom brought from Korea when I was like literally 50 years ago. And it's intended to be like to sit on the floor and eat off of. And where are you recording this?
I am in an office and I have had to figure out which animals can be in the room and which cannot because otherwise it sounds like someone's in pain the whole podcast.
Right.
So right now Callie's in here. She's actually snoring a little bit. It's so cute, but I don't
Oh,
think you can hear it. Yeah. But Jet, I think he found something else to do. Entire last
he
episode.
was. If you go back and listen to our first podcast, it's not Cheryl podcasting next to her husband who's snoring the whole time. It's a dog.
I'm podcasting next to my dog that's snoring. He's not even snoring. He's like moaning. Like, I don't know if he's in despair because there's another
He
male
doesn't,
dog in the house and he's not
he
happy.
doesn't like the podcast. Anyhow, let's roll right into our highs and lows of the week. You want to take the first?
Sure. So my high, I'm getting on your bandwagon where my highs and lows are from the same thing, but from the same circumstance. But I'm gonna start with my low because it started last night. Actually started before that, but I had to take my 13-year-old female dog who's a Cocker Spaniel mix of some sort, but she is the sweetest thing and I love her with all my heart and I can't even think about not being without her. So um I can't handle when she's not with me. I know that sounds very, very unhealthy. I know it is. I had a friend who shall remain nameless. I think on every podcast I'm going to say something about a friend that shall remain nameless, but this one, she's kind of mean, and I think you know who she is. Um, but she asked me to go out after work or something. After work, I used to be so tired when I worked full time, but also I did have to get home to the kids, my dogs. And she was like, we were on a text with another friend, and the friend was asking, well, can you go, meet us, da, da, da. And I was like, no. And then she chimed in and she goes, no, she's got to go home and breastfeed her dogs. Do you know who I'm talking about? I know you know who I'm talking about.
Yes. And that makes me scream loud.
It was mean, but it was funny. I have to say it was funny, but it's so true. So anyway, I had to take Callie has had a very sensitive tummy and she just goes, she's at an age where it's like everything that happens, I'm like, oh my God, is this it? I hate it. It's awful.
Yeah.
So I had to take her for an ultrasound. She had to fast, and usually I give them a treat right before they go to bed. She couldn't get one, so last night she's just staring over me. I'm looking at my iPad, and she's right here. I can see her face, and she's got her paw on me, like, "Hey, where's my nighttime snack?" Anyway, so I get really upset when I know I have to leave her there. So I didn't sleep well last night, and then I take her there, take her in, and I'm like, the text like, oh, you can take off her harness and her leash so we don't lose it. And I go, what about the collar? And she goes, yeah, that too. And I go, how will you know? who she is without her ID tag. And she's like, no, we have all the kennels, like all, labeled with everybody's name. Anyway, I am such a big baby. I cried on the way home. I cry every time I have to leave her there. And so that was my low. I seriously get very stressed and very sad because then it makes me think about when she is not here. She's just not at
Yeah.
the vet. I mean, she's literally I can't handle it. So anyway, my low, it's one of those things where you drop them off and they have a whole bunch. The specialist comes in once in a while to do this ultrasound, so they have a whole bunch of animals, and they don't like schedule everyone. They tell everybody come in at 8, and we get them all prepped. Oh, she got a Brazilian wax, by the way. No, they have to shave her tummy. Um,
Well, the
so they get
reason she's low too is because remember, she didn't get to breastfeed the whole time she was there.
oh my god, I
All
don't talk
right.
to her anyway. So my high was that they got her done really fast because I was like, I gave the girl, she probably felt really bad for me because I was like, I hate leaving her here. Anyway, so she called like an hour and a half later and goes, oh, she's done. So that was my high. What about you?
So well, I have two highs actually.
Oh,
So one of the highs is, and I just have to throw this out there. So little known secret, I only get my jeans at a thrift store. What
uh-huh.
I do is, I go to stores that I really like that shall remain nameless,
Hmm.
and I look at like the brands that I like, and they're always the really expensive jeans.
Hmm.
I don't like cheap jeans. And I know that's a problem because I don't like to spend, $80, $90, $110 for a pair of
Oh,
jeans.
God, no.
I know. And I've done it in the past. And let me just tell you,
Are they
like,
the ripped ones, like the ones that are all distressed and you have to pay
not,
a lot of money for that?
no, not right now because those are really not like, I feel like the last pair that I had, um, I looked in the mirror one day and I realized, yeah, I'm too old for that. If I get a little hole in them, it's okay. But the ones with all the rips, it's just, I feel like, yeah, why is that old lady trying to dress like she thinks she's young?
Your
So,
thighs are showing.
yeah, right. So, the spider veins are popping out and the varicose and then all
Ooh, sexy.
cellulite. But what I do is, so the other thing that happened was the last time I bought like a 80 or $90 pair of jeans, I lost a bunch of weight and I ended up having to turn around and donate them because, what are you going to do with a pair of jeans that are like, size 14 or 16 or something like that that no
I
longer fit?
keep it. I keep it
So,
because I yo-yo. My entire life is yo-yo.
so you know what I do is I get rid of everything I can't wear.
Mhm.
And then what happens is when I gain the weight back, I'm completely naked because I have nothing to wear but like two things that I stretched out because I refuse to admit defeat. So I'm very optimistic that way. So anyway, I only get my pants at thrift store.
Mhm.
And I went to the thrift store. That I have two pairs of lucky jeans. I've worn them so much that they're starting to get that, where the elastic wears out and they pucker in the front. Well, they look ridiculous. They look like, you know, they're
Elastic.
yeah, they'll look because I've washed them so many times the elastic is wearing out because they're like have elastic in them. They're like
Oh.
stretchier pants.
Oh.
And so I went to the thrift store. I picked up a pair of size 6 lucky jeans that
Ooh,
are
look at
like
you.
a
And
foot
Lucky is like really tiny. Like
yeah,
their
a foot
6 is not a 6.
girl,
It's like
a
a
foot
0.
too long for me. But luckily, Maria, my friend, she shortens all of my pants for me for free.
Oh,
And
that's
even though
nice.
they were a foot too long, I tried them on today and they fit like a glove. And I was like, look at
Yay.
my own size. Of course, as soon as I took them off, I was like, yeah, they're probably missized, and that's probably why somebody dropped them off at the thrift store. But that's one of the highs. The other high is, and girl, let me just tell you, I mean, what? I mean, you point me in the direction of a 55-year-old woman who's not going to feel good about sliding into a pair of size 6 jeans.
No, that's a high for sure.
Right? So the other high and low is I recently joined an orchestra, and last Thursday night was the first practice. And yeah, I'll go into more detail at another podcast when we
Yes,
talk
we have to
about
spend the
music.
whole yeah, we have to spend at least half of a podcast you
Yeah,
telling yeah.
yeah, but let me just tell you, it was a high to be there because the music was exhilarating, the energy in the room, the noise of all the instruments around me. But the low was I I've never felt so out of place because I only could hit maybe the first note of every measure. Because again, I had just gotten the music, I hadn't practiced it at all. The conductor literally started at tempo, which I mean, anyone who has played an instrument knows that when you practice a song, you start slow and then you build up. You don't start right out the gate, race, 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 race. So um, yeah, so like I said, we'll talk about, but that's my high and my low because I had combating feelings of like, oh my God, I'm a loser. He's going to look over here at any second and go, what is she doing here? Get her ass out of here. And at the same
Who
time,
is that? How did she get in here?
yeah,
No.
and at the same time, I'm like, I am so amazing. Listen to how amazing everybody sounds. And then the guy next to me goes, there's five sharps. I think you're playing it in a wrong key. And I'm like, oh my God. So it was like I was like literally the roller coaster was like up, down, up, down, up, down for
Oh,
like 2.5 hours of practice. I mean, but anyway, like I said,
yeah,
we'll
but
talk
you got
about that someday.
yeah, but you got that first one out of the way, and it is such an accomplishment. I mean, you should be very proud.
Well, I'm just oof. But anyway, I did practice at least. I've practiced at least already quite a few hours since Thursday night. So I practiced Friday, I practiced twice on Friday, I practiced twice today, I practiced. So I'm getting in a lot of practice. That's
And it gets better every time, right?
exactly. It's
Yeah.
not like the first day Bruno like squawked and squawked and squawked. And the other thing he does is he's my dog. He stands
That's a
under
dog. Yeah, you need
my
to tell them that's your
he stands,
dog, not your
yeah,
husband.
he stands under my right arm and he pops his head up so that he hits the bow and knocks it off the strings. And I'm like, oh my God.
That's
I
so
mean,
awesome.
so if anybody were walking by the house, they'd hear like, wah, wah, and then, woo, 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 woo. I mean, it's so crazy. So anyway,
That's
really
awesome.
quickly, we do need to go over a few disclaimers. I
Okay.
do want to just say that we have had a few technical hiccups in the first recording, and we will in this one. They will probably always arise as we learn this process. I live in the woods, and sometimes there are internet interruptions. Sometimes my voice will go in and out because of what we've kind of cobbled together as a podcast. Cheryl has elderly pets. Sometimes they moan and make snoring or barking noises. I have non-elderly pets that make loud barking noises, but we are both learning as we go. So bear with us and we will get better, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
This is true. And sometimes I may be moaning and making noises because my knees hurt or whatever. Something's hurting on me. But
Oh,
yeah, disclaimer is this podcast is not for children or people who are very sensitive about comedy where it doesn't belong
right. And
or swearing.
the last disclaimer that we want to shout out is we are starting this on Anchor, which is a free podcast software. We don't know if we're going to leave it on Anchor or if we're going to move it to some other format because we're kind of just learning as we go. Not to say anything negative or positive about Anchor. Again, if anything, the negative or positive is that we're learning as we go. So if we do move it, we'll definitely let everybody know so that all -3 of our subscribers can move to the new format, new
Yes.
platform. But we'll definitely let you know. And also we'll always welcome feedback. But again, if you're just going to tell us that our voices are going in
It's
and
not.
out, and that our voice gets weird, like funny snoring sounds in the background,
We
or
already
you
know.
can hear a dog barking. Again, just save it because that's really, we
Because
already know.
we said it first.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right.
Oh
And
my
I guess
gosh.
I guess it wouldn't be the internet if we didn't have a couple of trolls.
Yeah, that's true, but I could do without them.
Yeah.
Life
So,
is hard enough. Okay, yes.
so Cheryl, you want to talk about a little update on our
The
last
murders.
podcast, which is on the Idaho murders?
Yeah, so we know that Brian Koberger was arrested, right? And then on Thursday, the 12th, so 4 days ago, they had what's called a status hearing. And basically, at that time, Brian has an opportunity to say that he wants a speedy trial, in which case the prosecution at that time, well, they have 14 days to lay out their preliminary case. But because of the time that had already passed, on the 12th, if he had said, I want a speedy trial, I think they had like 6 days to lay out what they had. So, and then what I learned from the preliminary trial, again, I am not, if you did not listen to the first podcast, I do not claim to be an expert, only in my mind. Um, Preliminary hearing is where basically the prosecution, it's like a mini trial. It's so the prosecution is going to lay out what they have, and the judge is going to determine if there is enough to actually take it to trial, right? Because it costs a lot of money to get the jurors and all of that in. So he or she, the judge, is going to hear the evidence from prosecution, and then the defense also gets to cross-examine the witnesses. I think they get to put on their own side. I'm not sure about that, but all I know is it's where the judge determines if they're going to go further and have a trial. So Brian on the 12th, through his attorney, they waived his right to have a speedy trial. And they pushed it out 6 months. And actually, they pushed it out as far as they could. It was like, I think the judge was going to make it the beginning of June. And his lawyer was like, can we make it like the last week of June into July? And because they need time, she needs time. His attorney was like brought into it at the very last minute. Imagine the evidence um that the prosecution is going to put forth, and she's going to have to counter all of that. So yeah, so we're probably not going to hear very much. You're just going to hear the same stuff regurgitated everywhere, until the next step, which is the preliminary hearing. But that does not stop us from discussing what's been out there so far. This is something that we didn't get to last time, but there were rumors when he was first arrested. I don't know if you heard this, but that he told the cops, was anyone else arrested? Did you hear that?
I heard that and I wondered if that meant that he had an accomplice.
Do you, I mean, do you, like, what are your thoughts? I mean, it could be either way. He could be like calling their bluff and just trying to throw the scent off of himself, right? By saying, did you catch
Right.
anybody else? So they're thinking, oh, is there another accomplice?
So here,
But what if there really is?
so here's it can go two ways, I feel like. He could have said that to throw the media off. Um, so I think so I look at it like this. Um, I feel like whenever there's a crime like this committed, I feel like um people, especially someone like him who he had a background in criminology, he studied it extensively, then he commits these heinous crimes. I feel like in the mind of a person who becomes a serial killer, which I think he wanted to become, honestly, I think that every time you get away with a crime, or at least enough time goes by that they they can't connect the dots, I think the person becomes more emboldened. And I think
Uh-huh.
they it's a heady feeling like I did this and they haven't caught me yet. They didn't catch anyone and I got away with it. And so it emboldens them to take a few more liberties or to at least wait a significant amount of time before they commit their next crime. A lot of times when they get caught is they start to get sloppy and they start to make little mistakes, and it allows the police and the investigators to catch up to their crime. It allows them to put more things together. Maybe they slip up and there's a fingerprint somewhere, or they find DNA, especially nowadays when, you know, they're they can get DNA from the most crazy things, and they can,
Hmm. Yeah.
and they can also use different kinds of forensic evidence that wasn't even available, let's say when the Hillside Strangler was killing people. So
Yeah,
when I think
yeah, like
about,
Ted Bundy and those serial
yeah,
killers would not have killed as many, could not have killed as many people in
right.
this day and age. But let me ask you this. Do you think he was on his, well, you said you think he was on his way to being a serial killer. Do you think he killed before?
I think he No, the reason I think he didn't before is, and this is just somebody who literally is not really as well versed with these kinds of cases like as you are, but I will say this, I don't think he did before, because if he had, I don't think he would have been caught so quickly. He made a myriad of small errors that allowed the police to follow him. Remember, there are cameras everywhere.
Yeah, but
There are
see, if
recordings everywhere.
how could you not know that? That's the thing. Like how I if he has a master's in criminology, how can you not? You got, well, some people are very intelligent, like book wise, book smart, and then they just don't have any common sense. But because how could you like have your car pass by that many times? Like you're on
Mhm.
camera. How does he?
Well, I can just tell you this, like, it's so fascinating because with as much surveillance as we have nowadays, and with as much information that's out there, and as much capturing of your voice recognition, face recognition, every all that stuff, I I find it fascinating that and also the fact that he was a PhD student in criminology, so he had studied, read, observed, pored over, probably written papers, blah blah blah, case and case and case and case, study after
And then
study.
forgot about the
um,
security cameras.
exactly, and then also,
Like
the
shoot,
just
the
all
most
this stuff.
basic thing.
Yeah, whereas, like, in a case like the Brian Landry case where, he strangled his girlfriend and dumps the body and comes back with a van. I mean, obviously that kid was, probably it was the heat of passion, or like just he didn't know what to do. She was probably freaking out. He was probably freaking out too. And he ran. He strangled her, he dumped the body, he jumped in the van, which was the only place he had to live and drive, and
Which
drove
was
back.
her van. It was her van too.
And drove back to Florida. And, and then obviously he's faced with like two things. Either I'm going to, and that's the other thing that I find so interesting is what, like the mind of a killer. I feel that Brian Koberger would have gone on to kill other people had he not been apprehended, because um the manner in which those murders were conducted, and then also just his nonchalance, the way he was taking extra care by wearing the gloves so his DNA wasn't getting on things after the murders were committed. Brian Landry was probably leaving DNA everywhere. And then he was like, in his brain, he's like, well, I've committed a heinous crime. I have two choices. I can either spend the rest of my life in prison, but with his mental state, it probably would have done him in, or I can do myself in because, I've done
Yeah.
something horrible and I can no longer live with myself. Brian Kober, I think, was okay. He could live with himself, especially once you connect the dots and kind of learn who he was and how he got to where he was.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
I think he would do it again because in my opinion, it was a case of, being rejected. So and he I'm sure if he had gotten away with it, he sounds like, like just socially awkward, and he would have come across many other women that would have made him feel rejected. So if he couldn't control himself in this situation, have you heard that he told the neighbor, like shortly after the murders, he said to the neighbor, like, have you heard about this? He like discussed it. And the neighbor was like, yeah, of course, who didn't hear about it? And then he said something like, well, they don't have any leads, must have been a crime of passion. So, I mean, I think it was he ran across someone somewhere that lived in the house and he felt rejected. It has to be something like that. And in my
Well,
opinion,
well, and did you hear he said to somebody, I don't know if it was a schoolmate or a classmate or workmate or something, that like if he went out on the town to meet chicks, he could basically like take home anybody he wanted.
oh my God, yeah. Ugh.
And it makes me wonder, because he obviously they showed photos of him when he was in high school and after, and because he had problems and probably had not problems, but he had a weight problem and he was probably very insecure and he probably had difficulty, meeting girls, etc. It does make me wonder if he was saying those things, like saying it's a crime of passion so that the neighbor would think like, oh, so that, later on that's the guy who did it. Yeah, he was probably hooking up with those girls. Or, like saying that thing to his classmate or his workmate, like, yeah, I could have any girl. Generally, I find that when people say things like that, it kind of means that like they can have no girls.
Yeah,
Because
for sure. Yeah,
because
he's
how many people who actually goes home with a different girl every weekend, which I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if those people still exist, but if they do, I'll guarantee you they're probably not telling people, I go home with a different girl every weekend. One, because their friend's going to go, hey, herpes much? Or like, what, do you want to get some kind of weird disease to make your junk fall off? I mean, and also, what kind of a D bag runs around telling people, yeah, I take home a different girl every weekend? I mean, it's just weird. Like, nobody
although
should.
I do know someone who shall remain nameless, who went through an online phase back in the day when we didn't have smartphones, but we did have the internet and we did have dating hookup sites.
We did have
Oh,
I
huh?
mean, we did have flip phones.
Oh, okay. Well, so you're
I
just
just need
supporting
to
my point.
say that this
It
friend
is
of
so,
yours sounds really fascinating. And I'll bet that they were on the cutting edge of something that later on would turn into Tinder, Bumble, Grinder, Barn Finds, or whatever those websites are called.
well, I'm just glad that I mean, she is here is still here and not on some being spoken about on some murder podcast, because that girl, so everybody has, I think, has heard of the girl who came up on, well, she's on YouTube is where I found her. She said she had a Tinder date with him
Oh,
and that he insisted on taking her home and that he was trying to tickle her. That
I
part
read that.
that part disturbed me more than him asking if she lived alone, because it's so like trying so hard. It's so inappropriate, like can't read the room type of thing. Why would you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Why would you
it's
tickle somebody?
it's very indicative to me of somebody who didn't know what boy girl energy like that
Yeah. You
just
just
how to like maybe flirt, and maybe he thought,
yeah.
well, if I tickle her she'll laugh, and then maybe that means if she laughs then that means she likes it.
Oh
And
my
I
gosh.
don't really know like what, it's just like, those I remember going to Victoria's Secrets when I was like in my 20s, or yeah, and I remember spending a lot of money on matching bras and like these things that clip into nylons that literally are the most
Oh
uncomfortable, like,
my gosh.
oh yeah. And I remember thinking like, this stuff is really cute. Like this is the stuff that dudes are really gonna like. And realizing that like, no, nobody likes it. Like it's totally worthless. Like it's literally like, I mean, unless it's something that's like getting in the way of like the spots that the dudes do like, I mean, it just
It's
was not, I mean, it was pointless. It was like,
it's like
and
they
it was
had
like
to
a
unwrap a
fortune.
gift before they could.
Yeah, it cost a fortune. And and then it was always sliding in the wrong direction, and then there was runners going down the legs, and I just remember thinking like this is definitely something that someone created somewhere, like thinking this is really cute, and then like nobody ever bought again or
And
wore because it
and
was
what's
awful.
I want to know what the equivalent is for the man. Nothing. There's
Yeah. Yeah,
it's so
exactly.
unfair. I mean, it's literally there. Yeah, they don't have to go
Yeah,
through all of that.
although I mean, they have funny things for dudes to wear, but you kind of like the guy has to be a little bit of an oddity and think more of like, you know, it's I don't know, it's kind of
Like
gimmicky.
what?
Like animal things,
Prince.
like no, like something that looks like an elephant, that you would wear.
Oh my god. But I'm talking like, would they wear this under their clothing, or when they're in the boudoir, they go to the bathroom and they change? See, like women are expected to wear this under the clothing so that when the top layer comes off,
No, I
bam,
think
you're already sexy.
it's more gimmicky. It's more like, haha, look what I bought, and then you
Yeah,
laugh,
see?
and then
Yeah,
you're like, what is the
this is true. Okay, but can I just okay, so I want to ask you, because I wanted to ask you last week. Brian Koberger for any killer, um, their parents, like, do you think they minds? Do you think, or they
yeah,
just were like, "Oh, Brian's a little bit,"
yeah.
I mean, I
There are
sure
signs. There are definite signs, and I will tell you that because uh it's not a secret, and I've actually spoken to my sister and gotten her consent to talk about her at some point in the future. Um, I think about, how much do we know about the people that we grow up with, our children, our spouses, our loved ones. I think that there are signs, and I think that, especially in the case of like that guy who killed his pregnant wife and 2 daughters and then dumped
ugh,
the bodies in those, like,
Chris
oil
Watts,
baths. Yeah,
awful,
she
awful.
told her friend, that he had changed. He had, and remember, he had a girlfriend, he was making another life, with her, he was looking for a way out of his marriage, and she said to her best friend that he had changed. Now again, remember, he was she was a school teacher, wasn't she? And she was like or
No, she did some kind of,
sales, that's what it was.
MML, like multi-level MLM, MML.
Eminem. Yeah, she did, and she
She
had
just
gone but she had said that he was changing, and they had had, like, problems, financial problems, and they were arguing a lot, and she had said, "I'm gonna tell him that I'm pregnant," and I think because he had moved on already in his head, he felt like, "Oh my god, the only way I'm gonna be able to move on is to" and so he snapped. I will say that, like, yeah, I mean, I think back about the things that happened to my sister in her life and the things that led her to the point where she made some really poor choices resulted in her being incarcerated for 17 and a half years. I think that things do have to happen. I think the parents can look back and say, well, growing up, this happened and this happened. He was maybe a giant loser in high school. Maybe he was bullied a lot. Maybe he was the bully. Maybe he had relationships with some girls that he thought were special and the girls treated him different, badly or whatever. Whatever the case, I think that we don't like to see those signs. It's just like when somebody later on in life is diagnosed with mental illness, and a lot of times you'll ask people like when that person was growing up, because you can't everybody knows somebody in their family or immediate family or otherwise who suffers from mental illness. And, you can think back and think, yeah, they weren't able to, this was difficult for them, or this was difficult, or, et cetera, et cetera. And it's funny because, like, even with like illnesses, so like before I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, I can tell you that there were things that I noticed that were happening to my body as a result of not treating my type 2 diabetes, but I didn't realize it was type 2 diabetes because I hadn't had the diagnosis yet. But then after I got it, I was like, that's why I was always so thirsty. I would drink 3 4 glasses of water, and still I would wake up in the middle of the night and be so thirsty I'd have to get up and drink out of the bathroom faucet. I mean,
Hmm.
that is a telltale sign. But I never thought to tell the doctor, yeah, I'm constantly thirsty,
Yeah.
you know?
But now
And then,
how this is so,
so I,
well, just about Chris Watts's family. Well, his mother anyway. I don't know about his father, but his mother was brutal to his wife after her death. Like she didn't seem remorseful at all about what her son did.
well,
Um,
I'll say this, it's
that's the other
really
thing.
hard
If
with
that was
that
your
camera
kid,
in your face and the reporters asking you questions. I mean, and you've just been gut punched with this. Your son, is going to basically spend the rest of his life in prison. I don't envy those people. I don't envy, them having to like talk, on the fly,
oh,
just,
yeah,
be
that would be
interviewed.
hard.
They're not professional people who have been interviewed for anything. It's got to be very, very alarming. And at the same time, they're processing this information about their son, their daughter in law, their grandkids.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's my question though. How far do you go? Like Brian Laundrie's parents, they knew. He comes back with the van without, come on. What and his excuse was she met up with other friends or some kind of cockamamie story. And so his parents knew, right? And you had said this before, and I believe it too, that they went on that camping thing like it was the last hurrah. It was like their goodbye because, either he was going to go to jail. Well, they probably thought he was going to go to jail. I don't think they would have let him go if they knew he was going to kill himself. I don't know, but they knew. They knew.
Yeah.
So I just think I don't
You
have
know,
kids,
I think
but
also the mind of desperation,
mhm.
you talk your way. You can lay, I mean, there have been times where I've laid in bed after, you know, thinking about something that has happened, and justify, oh, this will happen, it'll all work out in the end, not that I've ever done anything like that, but I think you can talk yourself into a place where you rationalize your behavior. It's okay, I did what I had to do, and then I got carried away, so I had to do more crime, and then but it's going to be okay because I mean, we couldn't afford having another child, or we couldn't, we
Well,
were already,
I think I think with the Chris Watts, just to zero in on his situation, I think with him, he's also someone that's lost weight. So he was losing weight, and they always say that's a sign of, that's one of the signs of cheating when they start feeling good about themselves and da 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 da. And I think that he was so taken with this, what's her name? Nicole, right? Nicole, the woman that he had the affair with. I think that he just looked at her like, oh my God, I would never be able to get that, which is weird to me because Shanann, she was beautiful, but you never
yeah,
know what goes on behind closed doors, right? So I think he was just so like out of his mind that he could get a woman like this. Um, that he was willing to just, oh man. Did you hear his confession? I love that FBI lady who gave him the polygraph test. And she was like, she came in the room and she's like, okay, Chris, you didn't pass, right? She handled him the way she handled him, he could not deny. She was like, okay, come on. You know, you and I both know that you lied. But she got him, she to tell how oh my God,
I
those
can't even,
oil the
I
oil
can't.
drum
You know
the
why I
oil
can't listen
drum
to those? Because of the kids. I
yeah, because
have such a hard time when they're little kids like that. And I know it's because, as a parent, it's so hard for me to remove myself as a parent from that situation. But I think the thing that makes it so heinous is that, like, he wasn't like a rando, dude. He was their dad. I
Well,
mean,
here and this,
he wasn't, I think that what happened was he fought with his wife and things got out of hand. I can believe that.
but
But
here's the thing that I don't understand when it comes to that killing. Okay, so I can see how he's in his mind and heart, he's already left her, right? He wants to be with this lady. So they're fighting, whatever, and he kills her, but how does it go to the kids? I don't understand where
yeah,
it
that's
doesn't
why
stop. Like
that's where I think
snapping is one thing. You're fighting with her, you strangle her. Okay, but how? I guess you're just in such a
dark
state of
place.
mind that you, I mean, because it didn't happen like that. They were in the car. It was awful.
It was awful.
He
I
was
had a really
driving.
hard
Yeah, it
I
was
had a
awful.
really hard time with that. So yeah, I also yeah, I remember what was his name? Scott Peterson. He did a
Hmm.
similar thing with his wife Lacey Peterson. She was pregnant, but she was 8 months pregnant.
Oh my
You know
God.
how large an 8 month pregnant woman can be. I mean, she was a petite lady, but still, you're carrying. I mean, babies are born at 8 months of pregnancy and survive outside, the NICU all the time. Like, I mean, so that baby is at least five, five, four, anywhere from 4 to 7 pounds of gestation
Hmm.
because, like, I had one kid that was born 2 weeks late and she was 8 1. I had one that was born 2 weeks early and she was 8 12.
Oh
So
my
let me just
gosh.
tell you, like, so 8 weeks or 2 weeks early, I mean, that's close to 8 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you are pregnant for 10 months. People say 9 months, but it's 10 months. But still, 8 months, there's a whole month there. She could have
Yeah.
been 8 months and one day, or like 8 months and like one day shy of being 9 months. So she was pretty pregnant.
Y-
So I think about that. But of course, she didn't have, this was their first child, but it was a very similar case where he had met another woman. He was talking to this other woman. He was going to, and the other woman had no idea. That was even the scary part, was to think, oh my God, turn on the news.
Oh,
That's my boyfriend who I thought was single. And I had no idea. And then didn't they ask her to still, I don't remember exactly. Did the cops ask her to still like meet up with him? Because I would have
oh
been
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I would
Yeah,
have been
yeah.
like, no, I'm out. I'm out.
No,
I
no,
can't. I'm not meeting with him, and I'm not wearing a bug, and
no, but
I'm
she
not.
was so mad that she wanted to help. It's not only that you find out that the guy that you're falling for has a wife, but that he's suspected of killing her to be with you. I mean, she was so mad that she was like, "Yes, I will help you." So I don't know if she saw him, but she definitely recorded him. She wanted to get him to say something incriminating. But here's my question. And I tell me if it's too touchy because of your sister, so it's too close. Okay. But if one of your children committed a heinous crime that could send them to death or life in prison, would you turn them in?
I mean, I would definitely, um, advise them that they need to turn themselves in. If they
Mhm.
didn't turn themselves in, then I would say, I will be here. We can call the cops together. I'll be, hold your hand through this process. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. you know, and I'm not saying this to like to to downplay, whatever crime they've committed or who they've committed against. But knowing what I know about the criminal system, like the law, our court system, and knowing what I know about like the deals that the DAs make and if you're somebody famous, if you're not somebody famous, how much money, how much clout you have, do you come from a wealthy family or not? Can you afford a top-notch attorney? What I know is that the time that is served and the compensatory fines that or the retribution that is paid, to the family of whoever's deceased or whoever, the crime was committed against, a lot of times they don't make there's no rhyme or reason. That's
Hmm.
why you'll see somebody who's charged with something and they're out in 3 years with 5 years probation, or you'll see somebody like my sister who, they told her if she were to testify against her ex-husband, they would give her a reduced sentence, and she got 17 and a half years and still has a compensatory account that she has to satisfy, through whatever means she can.
Hmm.
So I think about that and I think that's fascinating because sometimes it doesn't feel like the punishment fits the crime. Now, I'm
No,
not
for
saying that
sure.
my sister's punishment was excessive because honestly, there's so many different ways to look at that.
Hmm.
Um, but at the same time, um, I mean, she life in prison is 25 years. That's what they consider a life sentence, 25 years. So she got 6.5 years less
Short
than
that.
life
Yeah.
sentence,
Yeah.
which I mean, if I've heard of people, testifying against the other party and getting, 12 to 15 years off of their sentence. So
Hmm.
who rolls the dice on that? There's no one, there's no precedent that says, at least in my understanding, that says, because I'm not an attorney, but that says, if you do this, you get this many. It's like there's what is the word? It's like there's guidelines. So you can, squish or squeeze the guidelines one direction or the other. So that's why you see so many times, well, they did this, but they didn't do this. So we're giving them,
Yeah.
it's
It
like,
also depends state to state. Because crime
right.
over, I heard somebody say, because Idaho has the death penalty. This is not, I mean, I'm not making light of it. But right across the border in Washington, they don't have the death penalty. So he could have the crime, you know what I mean? Like if he had done it on that side, he wouldn't have, the
Yeah.
death penalty wouldn't be on the table. Yeah.
What I
Yeah.
do
It's,
know is this. What I do know is this. Anytime, um, so this is what I do know. I do feel like he definitely wants to go to trial because he wants his name out there and because there's some kind of
OJ.
what?
Because of OJ, I think that is the, you know,
Well,
that
I don't
will always be an
necessarily know about
example.
right, but I will say that I think there is this desire for there to be notoriety,
Yeah.
and for your name to be out there. I mean, if you think about how easily we've named how many different murder
Yeah,
cases
murder.
by the names of the
Mhm.
people who committed them. And so there is this, kind of notoriety and celebrity status you get. I will
So
also
if he
say
draws
that,
it out.
right. And I will also say that, you know, I I don't think that and 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 he's definitely intelligent, and so when he gets to prison, provided he's not acquitted, which I doubt he would be acquitted, but let's say that he goes to prison. I mean, he will be a very learned person in a place that and surrounded by people who are not learned. I mean,
Mhm.
there's not a lot of like college educated, especially somebody who has a PhD,
Mhm.
or even a master's degree. I mean, I can tell you that while my sister lost her nursing license because of the crime committed, she is still in the like vast minority of people who have college degrees.
Yeah.
And so she is a person of some like information,
Mhm.
maybe not influence or notoriety or anything like that because she's a nobody, but she is definitely a person of information. She is asked, they rely on her to give information whenever it has something to do with medical things. People always ask her, to do kind of, bedside diagnosis for this and that because she did go to nursing school. So, she is a person of some information that which gives her, a leg up on say maybe somebody who doesn't, didn't finish high school or, doesn't have any information to give,
Yeah.
and he's going to be somebody of influence and information because again, remember, you're in a place where you're surrounded by people who have all committed crimes. And really, truly, like, if you got a room with, 500 people who've all committed murder, I mean, what separates one murderer from the other murderer?
Yeah.
The guy with the PhD is the smarter murderer, or at least a
Well,
smarter, because we're all criminals. So,
well, he has a degree. I don't know much. I don't know how smart, really, really. You know what I
well, I
mean?
mean, yeah, that's the other thing is, something has to be. I always go back to something has to be broken, and I go back to, like, it's funny you asked about the parent thing. I go back to the parents, and I think, you know, was there excessive use of corporal punishment? Was there excessive use of any kind of punishment, whether it was beatings, timeouts? Was it, was there verbal, emotional abuse, or mental abuse of any kind in the home? And then what were the parents' mental status as far as, like, mental health wise? Were did was there a history of mental illness? Was it being treated? Was it, were the parents supportive of treatment in the home? Because I mean, for example, I have anxiety and panic attack disorder. That is a mental illness. But I also have treatment. I have medicine that I can take whenever I have a panic attack or ongoing anxiety that lasts a long time. I also see a therapist on a regular basis. So I have a health plan in place to help me manage those things. So I look at the parents and I ask, like, were they taking care of this child's emotional, mental status? Were they taking care of them psychologically? Were they taking care of their health, physical health?
Yeah.
And then, like, was there excessive punishment or force? Was a parent overbearing or verbally abusive in any way? Was there any physical abuse? Was the child in any way, like, abused or molested as a small child or young child? Was there displacement? Because PTSD can manifest itself in so many ways. And
Yeah.
they know so much more now about PTSD than they knew before.
But
So
I
you
also,
do have to look at the parents and wonder, like,
I,
what's going on here?
but I also think, well, no, and it's not like I knew these people, but I've also heard of cases that, by all accounts, from the outside, the parents were good parents. Like the one I told you, I don't think we got it on recording, about the kid. Well, he wasn't a kid, he was in his early 20s, and he had been living with his parents. They were good, supportive parents, and they were going to cut him off, and he knew it, so he killed them, dismembered their bodies, cut up
So
their bodies into
sad.
parts, burned their heads in the fireplace, and then realized it was too much. It wasn't like he had a crematorium in the house, so he then started just throwing their body parts everywhere. But that
Oh my
they were
God.
they were good parents, by all accounts. Like,
But
I
by whose accounts? That's the thing. And then you do wonder, there had to be something leading up to him getting cut off. Was he a deadbeat? Was he a loser? Did they catch him smoking pot in the basement? Like, what was there? Had to be something else going on. Did he have a substance abuse problem? Was he, bringing home dead squirrels? I mean, I don't know. Like, you do wonder, like, who said they were good parents? Did they
yeah,
say they were good parents?
well, no, because they're dead. But what if they did everything they could? What if it don't you think there's outside influences? Like, it could be like the people that they get involved with, which is,
Yes.
the parents can, like,
There
try
is,
to.
there are, and there are kids that get, like, what do you call it when they find these there are kids that find groups online and join them, and what they um remember those 15-year-old girls that left um England and went to, like, join the Taliban or something, or Al Qaeda, and they ended up becoming basically sex trafficked, and they ended up, like, basically
No.
having a bunch of kids, and now they're trying to get back to the UK, and everyone in the UK is like, hell no, you're not coming back here. And basically they went online and they met these people who made them feel like they had community and that they
Yeah.
had, a sense of purpose, and they were tired of living in these very, like, cloistered environments where their fathers wouldn't let them go out without, without a chaperone, and they didn't like how conservative their parents were, and they felt like, oh, I can leave and travel the world, and I can, become the bride of one of these,
Oh my
jihadis
god,
or
that is
whatever.
so sad.
super sad. But at the same time, it's like if you meet people and you make community with them and you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, you're
um,
influenced, and that has
like,
nothing to do with the parents. I'm tell
well, I
the
think the lesson here is if you got a kid living at home and they're over 18, you got to have a really good reason. Like,
Yeah.
what's the reason? Is it because
Well,
they,
isn't that cultural though in a lot of cultures? It's cultural in a lot of cultures.
yeah, I think it is for like, because, yeah, and I don't want to go into too many details because I don't know who's going to be listening to this, but I, I knew someone who was single and in their late 30s who lived at home and they, presented to me as their culture. You lived at home until you married, and that's
Mhm.
when you left home. Um, they also were like sharing a room with like their 47-year-old brother.
Wow.
So
Yeah, I mean, I
I
have heard that
remember
too.
thinking how strange, like because in I couldn't wait to leave home. I mean, I had my bags packed and I was like literally 6 weeks ahead of time. I was counting down the days.
Yeah, I think it also just depends on the person. I think because I was very independent at a young age too. I didn't mind living by myself. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. The whole parent of a murderer thing is really, really difficult, especially with these
Well,
shootings and
you know what would be really fun would be to interview the parent of a murderer. We'll have to get
Mhm.
on that, right?
Yeah.
You might
Only
have
if they
breathing rain.
only if they speak truthfully. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? They're gonna come on and just say the right thing, and yeah, I
right,
really wanna
right. We
yeah.
should put a ad online looking for parent of a murderer. And
We're
then
gonna be like Brian Koberger. He was looking for criminals because he wanted to know how they thought and how they picked their victims and shit. Oh my god.
well,
But
we are
maybe we'll get to the point where we
we'll
will
have to
have
save that
guests.
for another podcast.
Yes, we do.
And that having been said, we are nearing actually just now in like 30 seconds our 60-minute time limit.
Our mark.
So
I
we're
hope
going to
everybody's still listening. I hope
we'll
they didn't
have to
drop.
save all the rest of this good stuff, like the interviews and all that, for our
Yeah.
next podcast.
Yeah.
But I think what we've learned here is push those birdies out of the nest. Also, if you're on a date and the guy reaches over and starts to tickle you, get
Run.
out of the car.
Run as fast as you can.
Yeah, that's right.
Gosh. Well, all right. Well, until next time, I have to take my other dog to the vet.
Oh, God, that's right. Oh,
Well, we'll
well,
talk about
everybody,
that someday too, our senior dog or my senior
right,
dogs or being a
everybody
senior.
have a really good week
Yes.
and be kind
Thank
to
you
your
for
senior
listening.
dogs. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
All righty.
Bye.